Hi, everybody. Welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm Joe Firestone, your host. Something that's been sort of making a lot of people wonder, I think, is why is Trump so angry, so despondent, so unable to accept that he lost in the election? Why is it so hard for him? Well, we can think of a few things. Well, first of all, since he'll probably be leaving the White House soon, he's going to be prosecutable. And then, second, of course, he just hates to lose. He hates to lose. But of course, he's lost at other times in his life. He hasn't always won. He's had to go into bankruptcy, on a number of occasions. Those couldn't have been entirely pleasant experiences for him, even though he was doing strategic bankruptcies quite often. Still, he must have lost on various other occasions. So why is it so hard for him to accept it this time? Well, a theory has emerged. It's an interesting theory, and it's expressed in an article which appeared in Truthout. And the headline of it is, Trump remains indignant because he cheated so hard and still lost. And the article is by William Rivers Pitt, one of my favorite writers, at Truthout. Okay, so I'm not going to read the thing, but the theory is that ever since the deal went down, to quote from the article, Trump has been walking around with a look on his face like he just watched Biden pull a live ocelot out of his nose and taught it to deal cards. The quote, he's a super brat, unquote, theory doesn't account for Trump's sustained astonishment. Even the most epic of assholes get the message eventually, but not him. Not yet. John W. Dean, formerly of the Nixon White House and presently a political commentator for FindLaw's Writ, has proposed a theory last weekend that rang all the bells, in my opinion. A quote from John Dean. Trump may be unable to believe he lost because, in fact, he rigged the election, unquote, tweeted Dean, and quote again. But maybe he miscalculated with only 10 million extra votes. So he now thinks he was out-cheated. In fact, Dems outvoted him, and he wasn't ready for it, unquote. And Williams Rivers Pitt says, that sounds just about exactly right. The explanatory period at the end of this weird sentence. It is a rule of thumb that virtually all of Trump's accusations are, in fact, confessions of his own shabby behavior. His bellowed claims of rigged elections and vast conspiracies are actually his helpless testimonial to the serious election misdeeds of his administration and his party. Trump, along with his Republican colleagues on the state and federal levels, have labored mightily for far longer than this election to rig the very notion of voting. The effort predates Trump by years. Look no further than the decimation of the Voting Rights Act by the Roberts Court, which opened the floodgates for dozens of brazenly racist voting restrictions across multiple states. Meanwhile, the rewrite of that vital law, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, gathers dust on Mitch McConnell's desk. By the way, if the Democrats should win, if they should win in Georgia and gain control of the Senate, one of the first things they ought to pass is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Going on. Every single election since then has been made deliberately more difficult for people of color to vote. Voter suppression efforts throughout this period have included the deliberate acts of sabotage. So in Georgia's then Secretary of State Brian Kemp wiped hundreds of thousands of people off the voting rolls, even as he was running for governor against Stacey Abrams. How corrupt can you be? He didn't say that. I said that. Let us also not forget Florida's decision to levy was essentially a poll tax on 1.4 million people with felony convictions who only recently regained the right to vote in the first place. Let it be noted that the Roberts Court made sure that rule sticks. Amazing. Anyway, William Rivers Pitt goes on, talks about the disinformation campaign waged against the black voters on social media during the 2016 campaign. And he also talks about the Republican attempt to deprive literally millions of voters of the ability to cast their ballots by mail by depriving them of ballot boxes. Only one was allowed in each voting district until hell was raised and the attempts were stopped. False ballot boxes started popping up in multiple places. On the eve of the 2020 election, Trump sent out an unambiguous call for poll watchers, quote unquote, to go to voting stations in cities like Philadelphia and Atlanta, home to huge black voter populations. The unvarnished purpose was intimidation. After he lost, Trump's lawsuits aimed at overturning the election focused on these and other cities with large black populations. The unvarnished motive was racism. Of course, all this is dead right. Dead right. Then there was Trump, the mother of all 2020 attempted rigged jobs, Trump's frontline inside attack on the USPS, on the post office, on the postal service. He knew millions of Democrats would use the mail service to vote against him. So he tried to burn the Postal Service down in broad daylight. But the Postal Service was more resilient than he anticipated. The ballots were carried to their proper destination with nearly seamless efficiency. Trump's accusations regarding fraud in the 2020 election are indeed a confession. His party tried and failed to rig the vote. That such massive labors came to nothing has left him, as Abraham Lincoln said of defeated General William Rosecrans, quote, confused and stunned like a duck hit on the head, unquote. It makes perfect sense. If I cheated that hard and still lost, I'd have trouble believing it too, says William Rivers Pitt. Well, maybe that's the reason why he's continuously so angry. I mean, maybe it is the reason. He went to such lengths to cheat, and he still got outvoted by what today is approaching 8 million votes. What a failure. Even being as crooked as he could be, he was still a miserable failure. That is what is so hard for him to take. Well, that's it for this progressive short take. I'll be back with another one pretty